What's happening, guys? Welcome to Jesster Radio. Today I've got Deon Rebello, CEO of DCX Bullion. Today we're going to be talking about, trying to hedge your bet against the rands, against currencies that, are never in your favor. So Deon, thank you, and I appreciate you coming in.
Jess, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So a little brief background, maybe like a little 2 minutes history on you and how you got started in bullions.
Okay, so I actually come from a mining manufacturing background, so left school, and I've always been mainly marketing, but within the mining sector and manufacturing. So mining and precious metals always came to me quite naturally. I've been fortunate enough to go underground to the deepest mines in the world, which go beyond 4.5 kilometers. And so I've always experienced, I was at the point then when gold was booming in the early 90s, and then it started to taper off, and then platinum started to boom in the early 2000s to peaking to around 2008. So I was fortunate enough to be in that sector when that was happening. And then, of course, COVID hit in 2020. I'd already formed the business in 2018. And, with 2020, it started to become more of a full-time job or company, whereas at the time before then, it was more just an enjoyment, a hobby. And, I was then exposed to silver. And at that stage, I knew a lot about gold, I knew a lot about platinum, but very little about silver. And suddenly when I was exposed to it and I started to look into silver as a precious metal and its value, I started to realize that it has massive, massive value going forward. When we talk about gold, silver, or platinum, which are precious metals, we're talking ounces, which roughly in grams is about 31.2 grams. So, and I'll talk about them in dollars because that's normally how we discuss it, but we can always cross to rand terms on them. But to simplify it is, if you look right now, an ounce of gold is roughly about $1,750 an ounce. An ounce of platinum is around $1,000 an ounce, and an ounce of silver is around $22 an ounce. So there's a massive difference in the actual value of those commodities. But interesting enough, especially with gold and silver, they follow a history, and they've got a relationship that they are being currency with man as long as we've been trading as human beings. And even up until 1971, when Richard Nixon was then the US president of the States, he was the one that actually removed the dollar from the gold standard. And from that point, we've gone into a whole monetary policy where we've literally been printing money. And this is where we're sitting with the problem we're sitting now in the world, that we are literally sitting on a massive bubble. And this was anticipated even earlier than 2020. And then when 2020 happened, this is actually, before then was known as the everything bubble. And 2020 hit, the pandemic came into the world. That even accelerated it because countries needed quantitative easing. We as civilians, were all locked up in our homes globally, but yet these economies needed to still function or they would have collapsed. So governments, by avoiding that, had to pump money into their countries to keep them from collapsing. Remember, we had social grants that were handed out during COVID. That was all that way of avoiding countries collapsing economically. But there's a price to pay. You don't get something for nothing. And we are now going into that period of time now where, some of the best economists, global economists, are talking about us going into a market recession, depression, or correction, and some are even equating it to a magnitude of a Great Depression. When that will happen, it's interesting. We've been discussing it for the last 2 years. And funny enough, a lot of them have said 2023. So we know that we're coming into that. But, aside from that, Jess, I think it's important. What I want to discuss here is more about people having the knowledge. And we all, as a business, are about information. So the one thing I want you to walk away from this today is like, you've got a different option to look at when it comes to wealth protection and preservation. And we firmly believe that physical bullion is that method and that vehicle to maintain wealth over the next 5 to 20 years, if not longer. We always, as a business, talk about generational wealth, and how generational wealth is built is through the long period of accruing and building up wealth. And we believe gold and silver and platinum have got that for us.
So essentially, you mentioned referring to gold in dollar terms. How do you handle rands and fiat currencies? Because obviously, you're trying to hedge your bet against inflation and all of those things that happened in an economy now that's obviously going kind of downhill. Yeah. But investing something in gold, silver, those minerals, kind of regardless of the inflation or whatever that happens, you're still pretty safe.
Yeah. So, Jess, that is a fantastic question, and it's probably the most relevant question, especially for South Africans, especially people that are living and earning rands. But this doesn't just pertain to the rand, as you said, fiat currencies. Now, the dollar is a currency, and we did mention that the gold is hedged to the dollar because it's considered the international currency. That is also in a phase of changing. Now, people say to me, what happens when the dollar does well or does poorly? Gold does better. So effectively, we always say this to say South African clients, is gold is a double whammy protection. So when you have a devaluation of the rand to dollar, you will see value. And when the dollar devaluates to gold, you see value. So just about interesting topic on devaluation of currencies. So we do a lot of case studies, and I said, for us as a business, our biggest thing is about making sure that everything that we talk about is reputable facts that can be verified. Now, the important thing there is if we look at a country like Argentina, it's a very similar country to South Africa. There's a little bit of differences, but essentially South Africa, if we look economically, we know there's issues. We know load shedding. And just load shedding itself is a lack of infrastructure that hasn't been built up over the last 20 plus years. But with load shedding is also affecting our GDP. So our actual growth as an economy is going to be affected. We already know for a fact that we are going to have a GDP deficit. So as far as money coming in, we're going to have less money coming in than what we're spending. So essentially, we know that the rand is already going to weaken more to the dollar. And this is coming in the next couple of months. Within this year, we will see the rand start to do value further. So, as I mentioned, we do a lot of research, and we looked at a country like Argentina. And if you look, in January of 2020, the Argentinian peso was around 59 pesos to the dollar. And they then had a sovereign default in June of 2020. So literally 6 months later, they defaulted. And when we talk about sovereign defaults, and South Africa is very close to this. We've incurred massive loans over the last 3 years. And interesting enough, it was just the other day where Treasury was looking to secure another loan from the IMF. And we're just digging ourselves deeper and deeper into this hole. As a person, if you had to just taking on loans and loans to try cover your living expenses, eventually you're going to implode. And this is the same scenario with the country, but it's just at a bigger scale. So we looked at Argentina, right? And as I said, they defaulted on their sovereign debt. And when we talk about a sovereign default, simply it's the inability to repay the interest on the loan. So it's not even the loans anymore. It's the interest that's been generated from those loans that they can't even pay that. And that creates a sovereign default. Subsequently, if we look at it now, we're just over 2 years down the road with Argentina. Their peso went from 59 pesos in January of 2020. It's now at 189 pesos to the dollar. Sure. So in the space of 2 years, they've literally lost 3 times the value of their currency.
And is that just by not being able to pay their debts? Or?
Well, it's a slippery slope. And we've seen this with South Africa. we were in the early 2000s around, or late 1990s, early 2000s around, probably 7 to 8 rand to the dollar. But we saw we had that slippery slope. We went into the teens, and now we're in the high teens, and it goes like that. But yes, essentially with Argentina, the inability to repay those loans, you lose credit worthiness. So in other words, they are unable to repay any of the loans, or they're unable to secure any further loans. Yet they still go to, remember I spoke, if it was an individual and you've just taken all these loans to survive, now how are you going to get out of it? So now things start to break down. You have a breakdown of social structure, so it's a whole slippery slope in its own right. But what's interesting, and as I said to you, the important thing, this is about empower. Empower is information. And that's what we really focus on here, is we did a case study and we said, if you took $1 million pesos and you held it in an Argentinian bank in January of 2020, right now, in the same $1 million pesos in an Argentinian bank, in buying power, you would have the value of about 250,000 pesos in value. So your pesos has lost threefold of its buying power. Still $1 million pesos, but its buying power is 250,000 pesos.
So let's say they took those pesos and they bought $1 million pesos worth of gold.
Fantastic. I was actually just about to come into that. So we did. We applied that same thing. So in January 2020, we said we'd like to purchase physical gold. And again, we could have made this look sweeter and just it's gold, the spot price on gold, which is the paper or the market derivative price of gold. But we applied a premium for physical gold. And interestingly enough, you would now be sitting not on $1 million pesos worth of gold, you'd be sitting on just under 4 million pesos worth of gold. So during that period of time over the last 2 years where the peso has literally gone like that to the dollar, your value of wealth would have been maintained and then grown like that. So you actually, in unstable times, would have actually reestablished your wealth and would have actually grown it further. And just literally purchasing gold and holding it. So, I mean, that is an amazing thing to even think. And again, it's not, as I said, it's 1 million pesos. If we actually convert that to rands, it worked out to be about 11 ounces of gold. So it's not a massive amount of gold, but it's a fair amount. And if you look at it now, the actual buying power, that same, if you had 1 million pesos, what it would buy you, it's roughly about 3 ounces of gold. Sure. So you see how much that currency is devalued to the dollar.
So what about someone now, in terms of your company, I now want to buy gold, I want to buy silver, I want to invest in it, but I don't have enough cash. I don't have like 30K to put towards, a quarter ounce or whatever the exact thing is. How do you facilitate that process for, people that maybe don't have 30K to just put up front?
Again, fantastic question. So for us, we do have clients that come in and can purchase 30,000 Rand, 100,000 Rand. In fact, we've had clients purchasing a couple of millions with us. We utilize Fidelity Security Group for vaulting, and we also utilize Skynet for delivery. So it's all insured, it's fully covered. But we also saw, and this was actually inspired by a woman, and we'll just call her Barbara from Langebaan. But she is a real person, and she was one of our first clients. And every single month, without fail, Barbara bought an ounce of silver. Came a couple of months where she saw things weren't great in the economics of what's going on, and she'd phone me and say, Deon, can I buy 2 ounces of silver this month? And then her daughter got married, and she said, Deon, I need to buy another 2 extra ounces this month. But slowly, over that period of time, and an ounce of silver, roughly in Rand terms, then was about 400 Rand an ounce. It's sitting around 600 Rand an ounce now, so it's actually grown over that period of time. But what's interesting is we know that Barbara didn't have available income to go and purchase 30,000 Rand or a kilogram of silver, which is 15,000 Rand or so. So we then looked at a thing called the Monthly Medallion Club, or we coined it the MMC. And
no pun intended.
Yes, exactly. And so what we decided to do there is we realized that currently in the market there's nothing available for people to be buying physical gold, silver or platinum at a low price point. We looked at some of the models that were available. Some were you buy a percentage of a Kruger Rand, and then when you want to sell, you got to they have first options. And we just saw this, it wasn't client-centric, it wasn't client-focused. So we said, you know what, we want a client to buy as little on silver as 375 Rand, 450 on platinum, and 500 on gold. So, I mean, it's small amounts. I mean, let's be honest. If we go out for dinner, 2 people, you're looking at what, $500?
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, exactly. And that's a lunch without drinks or wine or anything like that. So it's small amounts of money. Yet what we do is we actually buy grams of gold. So every single month, the client, you actually create a profile. You go onto a website and you actually follow the MMC link, and then it actually takes you to, you create a profile. From that, you then can create a subscription. So you can choose between silver, gold, or platinum, which ones you want based on your monthly available income. And the nice thing is every month, come the beginning of the month, we then have a recurring payment, and you actually can buy grams of gold, silver, or platinum. Now, the nice thing with this is they are your grams. We are only ever the custodian of it. And what's important here is silver is a non-beneficiated precious metal, which means you can hold granules of silver, you can hold bars of silver, you can hold medallions. It doesn't matter. But platinum and gold, you can't. We as lay people, you got 3 options. The first is little bars from, say, Rand Refinery. They got to be fully encapsulated. They got to have serial numbers. You got to have a full paper trail of where they're from and all those kind of things. And they are problematic. I mean, there was a story probably about a year and a half ago where gentlemen from Madagascar were coming through ORT with a whole bag full of these little bars. And they couldn't prove where they got them from. They were arrested firstly because it's illegal based on our precious metal laws, and they were confiscated. The other option is sovereign coins like the Kruger Rand. Now, we're not a massive advocate of Kruger Rands because, like the money in your wallet, right? You never own that note or that 100 Rand note. You only ever own the value. It remains government property. Now, Kruger Rand's the same thing. You will only ever own the value of a Kruger Rand. Now, how we know this is simple. If you choose to leave South Africa tonight and you've spent the last 10 years buying Kruger Rands and you want to leave, you need a SARS clearance to retake 10 Kruger Rands. So it's limited to its versatility.
So now, if they get gold through you or silver, anything, what's the process in terms of immigrating? So the third product is what we mainly do. So we do Kruger Rands, we do sovereign coins, but we don't see value in that from a wealth preservation or investing perspective. We looked at medallions. Now, for the layperson, which you don't have a precious metals license, that is probably the best vehicle. You can hold a 1/10 of an ounce of gold, which is roughly 3.2 grams, to 32 ounces of gold, which is a kilogram of gold, which is R1 million in your hand. And the amazing thing with that is you can take that R1 million in the form of a medallion, which has to comply to local laws. Now, we have to comply to SATMA, which is a South African Diamond and Precious Metals Regulator. They specify that anything that you produce needs to be minted, and it needs to have its purity and weight and all those things on it, which we comply to. And the interesting thing with that is you can take that R1 million, you can choose to leave tonight. By law, you're not breaking any laws. You are not transgressing anything that's illegal. And that's the important thing is you can land in London, Perth, as we mentioned, anywhere in the world, and you will have the same value of that gold in that currency globally. So medallions offer a lovely option like that. So they are definitely geo-neutral, but they also have that ability to be able to carry in bigger quantities. So now you say that you could take your medallion, your R1 million equivalent medallion overseas. Now, if you sell it, let's say now you're at a point where it's worth 1.5 million, and you sell it, you don't have to pay tax on that, or do you?
Yeah. So the interesting fact with that is you have to pay CGT regardless. But if you purchase gold, and this is a lovely thing, is you only ever pay CGT on resale, on when you choose to sell
That's
it.
capital gains tax.
Yes, capital.
For the younger audience.
Yes, capital gains tax. But the lovely thing is, if you choose to buy your medallions and you grow them and you get to a point where you choose to, and we use the term liquidate, and when I say that to people, they're like, oh, liquidate is a bad word. In precious metals, it means converting it from a precious metal into cash. So if you choose to liquidate it, you don't need to go and liquidate big portions of it. You can liquidate smaller portions of it to whatever suits you. There are tax thresholds that you can avoid CGT and things like that. So you will always pay tax. But what we're looking here for is the most effective way of doing it. So just back to the MMC. So if we look at the MMC, and this is where medallions come into it. So we allow every client to, on a monthly basis, to be buying grams of gold and silver or platinum. They choose what they want. We, as I said, with platinum and gold, you as a layperson can only hold a finished article of gold. Like I said, little bars, Krugerrands, or medallions. Medallions, like I said, are also, they fall into the class of jewelry and collector coins. They are like jewelry. And even within refining circles, within precious metals, when we sell them globally to other big investment houses, they are classified as jewelry. The lovely part with that, and this is another perfect example of this, is we had a client who emigrated to Australia. He had collected over 2 million rands worth of Krugerrands, which is 60 Krugerrands. He is currently in Australia, and one of our partners, being Tax Consulting South Africa, contacted me and said, listen, we got this issue. The client's Krugerrands remain in South Africa. He is in the process of emigrating, so they need to know what they can do. We gave the solution. We could have them delivered to him in Australia. He would pay the cost to, literally like James Bond, where there's a small case, a chain, and we actually get it's called onboarding parcel. Guy sits and he literally would fly to Australia and deliver those Krugerrands to the gentleman. Or he has an option to liquidate them, where we'd then give him the rand value and then give it across. And I said to the client, what's interesting is, I said, do you understand, if you had bought medallions for the same value, when you chose to leave South Africa with all your wife's jewelry, was there any issue with that? And he said to me, no, it's a jewelry. I said, your medallions would have been in the same box and would have fallen under the same laws. So not having this, that they're held back and you got to wait for SARS clearances and this and that. And, to the extent, and we haven't concluded this yet, but the likelihood is he probably will not actually even keep them. And I think it's so sad that here he's taken years to grow his bullion wealth and hedge his wealth out of rands, and now suddenly he's having to start from scratch again. So that, and that's where that really comes into it. And again, this is where the MMC as a product allows people to be purchasing grams. So we always get this, and people say, yeah, but say I've got a tough month and I've got a lot of expenses and I can't pay my monthly subscription of 500 Rand. We allow a client to do indefinite monthly holds, and so they can actually put their subscriptions on hold continuously on a monthly basis to when it suits them. They can up it, they can decrease it. We allow a lot of that movement. We've even had clients saying, they're happy with their silver. Can they liquidate their silver, but they want to move to a gold product or platinum? So we do get crossings on that, and generally we keep it as customer friendly as possible.
So now let's just say it took me a year to completely pay off and, acquire that, whatever ounce it would be of gold. Now what is it? Do you facilitate and keep it there with you guys in your, facility, or am I able to get it? What's the process there once I've paid off?
Well, so Jess, the important thing here is you own those grams the whole time. We are only ever the custodians on your behalf. So you have full control. In fact, you could get to halfway to half an ounce, which is roughly 15 grams of gold. And you could say, I want to liquidate. We would give you the value on that day. So say we're gold sitting at now about $1,700 an ounce, as I said, $1,750, and it's then gone to $2,000 an ounce. We pay you out on that. So your grams grow while we hold them, but they remain yours. So that's a great question. So when you get to an ounce, you have two choices. We can get it delivered to you with Skynet through insured delivery to your door, or we can hold it with Fidelity, who's the other partner, and that's free vaulting and insurance to the value of R1 million. We've had clients also that choose the vaulting option, but they've grown their bullion and they then want it delivered. We can do part delivery, so you can have it held in vault for 6 months to a year and then choose an annual vault delivery. We keep it as customer-centric or customer-focused as possible.
So, let's say I have been paying towards my gold 600 Rand every single month for a year, and then I realize, that value at the end of the month is actually worth double now. I just want to sell out. So then you basically just give those people essentially double what they've paid if the gold has gone that direction.
Absolutely. So this is also important earlier we discussed that I think a lot of what we taught and I think the trends with Bitcoin were a perfect example of it, where people went in to make a quick buck. And essentially, if I had to come to you and say, put all your money on gold, that's gambling. And essentially, as a business, we don't work that way. We say gold if physical bullion is about the long-term investment. So we would look at 7-year cycles, so 7, 14, 21, and so on. And you think about it like this: if you starting out, 0 to 7, you're going into primary school. 7 to 14, you're going into high school. 14 to 21, you're going into your professional business career or studying. So it's a lovely angle. And the difference is this: that normally 5 years of investing, the extra 2 years of compounding make a massive difference on growth. So we know that even with gold. I mean, for instance, gold in dollar terms over the last 50 years has given compound return of 8% per annum. In rand terms, it's nearly 3 times that amount.
And if you look at, let's just say you're fortunate enough to get an investment that you pay into that gets 8% as well, you're essentially still losing money because of inflation.
Correct.
Whereas with the gold, you're kind of hedging against inflation because the value of gold, regardless of, because it's not actual physical money, it's the currency that it's worth.
So I love, let's put it this way: gold is money. And gold is, as I said, we've used gold as humans as long as we've been trading. But legally, gold is money. And we need to start realizing that it is one of the most safest forms of wealth preservation. And how do we know that? Is any time of economic uncertainty, and this is globally, we know that your big investment houses, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, those kind of big investment houses start hedging a lot of their investments into gold because it's stable. It's stable through unsure economic periods. So we look at what's happening in the world right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. We've got geopolitical uncertainty with war in Russia and Ukraine and so on. But then we also know economically, I mean, as I said, we don't know where things are going to go. And there's just so much uncertainty out there. And this is where people get worried. They get worried that, what is their gold? What is it going to be worth over the long run? You speak about inflation, and this is such an important part of it. So essentially what that means is if I bought something for 100 Rand 2 years ago, that same product I'm paying 150, 200 Rand. We see it when we go to Woolies or to whichever shop you shop at, where you before, and I mean, I look at it like simple things like, say, a punnet of blueberries. I mean, you look at it like 2 years ago, you'd be spending $30. Now it's $40. Now it's $50. Now it's 18. It's nearly 100 Rand 2 years down the line. That is currency. That's food inflation, but it's also devaluation of currencies from a purchasing perspective and all those things. So interesting with that, we also looked at one of the other case studies we did was with an RA. And it's fully legitimate. It actually was my own personal RA. It's with one of the biggest established companies in South Africa. In fact, I've got all my investments with them, including medical aid and so on. They're well established, and we decided to do a case study and look at my RA over literally the last 14 years. And interesting enough, when we first looked at it, the rand dollar was around 7 rand to the dollar. And we see where it is around now. It's around 17.
It must have been a while back if it was 7.
Yeah, 14 years ago.
Okay.
So just over a decade and a half, it's devalued that much. It's literally lost half its value, if not more. It's actually more. So you look at that. So the rand went from 7 to 1 to 17, 50, 18. It's pulled back a bit. So we know that. So if we look at the monthly premiums, they equate to 162,000 Rand over that 14-year period. Now, what's interesting is, so that's every single month I'm paying into my RA. And if people don't know what an RA is, it's a retirement annuity. So it's a way of, as I said, that's what when I started working, I was told, get an RA, put money into it, and when you get older, you can retire with it. I can tell you now, I don't think so, because of how it's performed. And based on its general performance, it hasn't done that badly. As I said, premium-wise, I spent 162,000 Rand over that 14-year period. Its value is around 206,000 Rand. So it's only grown that little much more.
Now imagine you had bought gold.
Well, this is it. So what we did is we applied the same formula. We said those premiums over the 14-year period, but again, we didn't just say spot, we applied a physical price to it. So we made it as real as possible. And interesting enough, you would be sitting just on the growth of gold and the devaluation of the rand to dollar, you'd be sitting on 250,000 Rand in gold. And the difference is it's no longer in rands, it's in gold. So just that, same money, same input, the difference is the outcome. 205,000 Rand or 206,000 Rand in RA value, or nearly 250. So it's grown literally 50,000 more over that same period of time.
And I think what you offer is such a special service, because I'm personally, will put like 3,000 Rand a month away for an RA. Whereas if I'm putting 3,000 Rand away to you guys and putting it towards gold, that is going to be far more valuable at the time of retirement.
Absolutely. And again, I always say this to people, and I do a lot of talks and stuff, is what I'm talking about now is not even investing with my business. The information I'm giving is about, it's a mind shift, it's a mindset change. And as you said, it's the difference is instead of putting that money into an RA, 3,000 Rand, and it grows to those values, but it's also at the end when you want the money back. Now, I've heard this from so many people. So they get to the retirement age and it's due to be paid out. So they say, yeah, listen, it should have done 2 million, but it did 1.8. Okay, fine. Can I have my money? No, you can only have half of it now, and the rest we'll give you on a monthly basis. But it's your money. It's what you put in there on a monthly basis, and now you've been limited to it. Sadly, and I will say it, is the people that make money from RAs are the ones that sell them. Difference is if you had bought it in gold, you'd be sitting with ounces of gold. The difference is you can choose to liquidate whichever amount you wanted. And the lovely thing is, being in a medallion, you could go to a jeweler and say, you know what, I'm about to get married. I'd like to get a ring for my wife. There's my gold. And he can make jewelry from it. So it gives you that flexibility. It allows you to liquidate small amounts or large amounts. So you could choose to go away on holiday. Oh, let's liquidate 2 ounces because we want to go away to the States or wherever.
And now, so in terms of personal experience, obviously I, being in my generation, got on the Bitcoin train quite a bit. And, I went and bought 80,000 Rand worth of Bitcoin. Roughly now, it's probably worth about 40,000. So it's halved. Whereas if I had bought gold, I did buy Kruger Rands maybe 3 years before that. And those Kruger Rands that I spent on the same amount of value I spent towards the Kruger Rands as the Bitcoin, the Kruger Rand has way outperformed, and it
Absolutely.
stood the test of time, whereas Bitcoin has kind of looked like it was a fad. Then people started selling because there was also a lot of scamming involved, whereas, with legit corporations, there's no way to scam people. So there's safety in gold. There's this, it stood the test of time, and then also you can hedge against currency. So from all aspects, gold is just the safer route. Whereas with with Bitcoin, there's, just look at these companies that have, had to go bankrupt because they can't, when people want their money, they don't have the money to give. So there's so many uncertainties with Bitcoin. It's been pretty consistent lately, but badly consistent because it's halved in value from almost when I bought it.
Yeah.
Whereas gold, it's never done a complete dip like that. Even in the pandemic, that's the true thing that stood strong regardless of the economy.
Yeah, listen, you've said a lot there, and I know lots of people that invested in many companies that were parading themselves as Bitcoin companies, and we know many of them. And sadly, people, like I said, you remember, if you put everything on one thing, it's gambling. And when I know of people that literally rebonded their homes because Bitcoin's running and they want to seize the moment, and now they're sitting with a problem where it's halved, so they literally have lost not just that money, they're actually down. Now, the interesting thing is this, and people don't realize it, and silver is a similar thing to gold, that silver is very erratic. It's very similar to Bitcoin. It can jump up 2-3-fold and it can pull back 2-3-fold. And why this is the size of the market. Gold is traded on a daily basis in the $1 trillion. It's a massive, massive market. So for gold to have a peak or drop, it is marginal compared to a peak or drop in, say, Bitcoin or silver, because they're smaller markets and they're easier to manipulate, they're easier to flood and to withdraw and profit taking, things like that. And I think a lot happened with Bitcoin there. We talk about it from an investing perspective with stock markets, where you look at it's called the Kindleberger and Minsky model, and it's of booms and busts. And you get your early phase adopters, and that's all the good money. So they're the people that bought gold, like you did, those Kruger Rands. And like I said, I've got nothing wrong with Kruger Rands. It's just on the reselling of them. But I'll get back to that. So you bought gold. You can see how much its value has grown over that period of time, whereas you'd invested the same with Bitcoin and it's fallen. And that's the problem, is you bought Bitcoin on the peak. You didn't buy it on the dip. Now, interesting, gold, silver, and even platinum are on the bottom side, and they actually hitting that upward curve. And how we know this is it's moved into the third phase, which is where there's massive public adoption. We know, for instance, like with silver, I'm sure you remember the Reddit groups, the Wall Street Bets groups with regards to silver, and they're trying to do a silver squeeze. I think it was in January of last year. And they literally pushed silver from $20 odd an ounce to over $30 an ounce, but it was then subdued and pulled back into the 20s. Thing is, silver in its own right is undervalued, and we know that it's going to push up higher. There's just so much to talk about. But in just that, silver has got massive, massive value. But yes, if you look at that and you see the growth of your gold versus the Bitcoin is in a smaller market. And to put that much money, and the thing is, we were made all these promises. People said, yes, its returns are great and this and that. And suddenly they pulled back. Again, this is what we speak about. Gold has a proven track record. Even, like I said, if you look over a 50-year period, gold has given a compound return in dollars of 8%. We look at the 80s and 90s. Those were very lateral decades for gold. Yet still, over the long term, it's given that return. Now, we talk about Kruger Rands. And as I said to you, I personally love Kruger Rands. And for instance, I've got one from my daughter. She was born in April of 2020. And she's turning 3 now. So I've got a Kruger Rand with her birth date on it. So people say to me, but yeah, they have a Kruger Rand from 1967 when the first new style Kruger Rands were actually produced. Is there greater value from that one to a 2023? and there isn't. And the problem is this, is a lot of people that sell Krugerrands will say, buy a proof set, it's more shinier and it's in a capsule and it has a higher value. And instead of charging you the price of what you'd pay for an ounce of gold, it's sometimes nearly double its value. But the difference is when you choose to sell it back or you want to liquidate it, you get the value of what gold is right now. So you actually lose money. And that's where, like I said to you, be aware of that. Yes, Krugerrands are a good investment because they're gold. And that's, at the end of the day, what we're more concerned about. You've taken your wealth out of rands and you put it into a vehicle. And that's more important.
So now, obviously, you say with the RA, the financial advisor is the one that makes the money. You guys, the only money you make is your slight service fee that you obviously charge just to process and broker the deal, essentially, per month.
Yeah, so essentially, we involved from the manufacturer side. So we have a facility that manufactures. There's cost in manufacturing. There's electricity. There's labor. Those kind of things. So those costs get caught. We got to recuperate. There's a small margin because it's right now highly competitive. I'm sure you've seen. There's so much advertising out there right now. You hear it on the radio. You see billboards. You see it all over about gold and investing. And, where do you invest? Who you invest with? And that's what's happening right now. There's massive awareness for it.
So I think, it shows your belief in the product that you're selling. Because if you look at a financial advisor, all they do is push the policies that make them the most money. Whereas you are pushing the minerals that bring the best return, because everyone wins at the end of the day. It's not like they're paying all this money towards gold and then they're going to lose it at the end. It's they're paying this amount of money and they're going to win, and you're also going to win, because the better they do is the better you do, and everyone just wins at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And for me, as I've mentioned, for me, the awareness is if anyone listening to this has now suddenly had that mental change, that shift, and they're actually now looking at their investments thinking, but I don't have any gold. Oh, I can't afford it. No, you can. There are models out there. There are companies like ours, similar to ours, that are offering similar products. But just be a little bit circumspect. Ask the questions. Make sure you understand what you're being sold. If the price of gold is X and you've been charged a lot more, I can assure you it doesn't matter how shiny it is or how special they say it is. At the end of the day, when you have the value from an investing perspective, it's based on its purity and weight. That's all that matters. Unless it is a super rare coin, but even then, those are like a needle in a haystack.
And I think at the end of the day, you are offering essentially that there's going to be constant growth just based off, history. There's going to be constant growth on it. Whereas you can take out your money at any point. You can liquidate those coins at any point.
Absolutely.
Whereas to get a really good interest rate with an investment, it needs to be fixed for 5 years, or it needs to be fixed for whatever terms, Whereas with you guys, there's the return on it, and then they can liquidate at any point.
Well, what's interesting is we got quite a good solid client base. Our biggest sales are from clients repurchasing, and I think that speaks volumes. So we are definitely doing something right. That our continuous purchase, we're doing it on a daily basis where our clients, and they become fiercely loyal because they see what we're doing, they know what we believe in, and they know that we are offering as best a product that we can give to market. In fact, we're looking at even new products, and definitely when I come and speak to you again, we'll have some more exciting news on some really new developments that we're working on.
So now I'm 20 years old, even 20 to 40. I've put money for RAs, I've done all of that, but I want to do some gold, I want to do some silver, I want to look at some platinum. What do I do? Obviously, your website's going to be in the description below, but what are the first steps that you think, these individuals should take?
Do some homework, do some research, And this is also go onto my website, go onto our website. We got a vast array of newsletters where we speak about the Argentinian sovereign default. We speak about the RA. Those have already aged, but the numbers and figures and what they're based on still speaks volumes. Do your research. Send us an email. If you're not sure, the amount of times that I will spend time with clients or one of my staff will discussing it, because a lot of time this is unknown. And like, where do we start? And I've got 100,000 Rand, but do I just buy gold or silver or platinum, or which do I do? Now, I haven't even gone into the individual metals. And I mean, the exciting thing is this. I've been talking mainly about gold, but I could just talk on platinum, and I can tell you now, you'd be like, wow, okay, I need to invest in platinum. Or I could just talk on silver, and you think, you saying that silver can go from where it is now to 3 figures to over $100 an ounce by the end of this decade. And we can say it's highly likely, because it's not just a currency like gold, but it's also an industrial metal. I mean, the biggest growth market for silver right now is your photovoltaic market, your solar panels. That is running at around a 20% per annum growth right now. We look at just what load shedding has done for that market locally. The two biggest countries that are demanding solar panels is China and India, the two biggest populations on the planet. So we can see, and silver is used a lot in solar panels. In fact, silver, second to oil, is the most used commodity on earth. It has the highest heat and electrical conductivity. Now I've already got you thinking about silver, and you're thinking, but we were talking about gold. Now you can see, I say to you, I see merit investing or looking to put wealth into silver? As I said earlier, silver is more erratic. It is a smaller market, but it also has potential of greater gains. I mean, for silver to go up nearly threefold is not impossible. And with its current demand, we look at the world we're moving into, where less fossil fuel driven cars are going to be there. And we're going to be talking about batteries and electric cars. But then I could say to you platinum, and you'll say, but why platinum? And then I could say to you this, that same those electric cars and engines and things like that if they're powered by a hydrogen fuel cell, and simply put it, platinum is a catalyst that converts hydrogen from gas into electricity. And it does it far more effectively than any battery can. Its recharge times are less. It's literally like you going to a petrol station or fuel station now and fueling up. It has the same distance as far as range. Your power to weight. And we look at trucks. You look at a Superlink, which we see hundreds of them on our roads on a daily basis. I mean, I was down in Durban last week and traveling the N3 with the trucks that are on that road. And imagine those were battery trucks. A third of the load would be batteries. It doesn't make economical sense to then use a truck. But if it's a hydrogen fuel cell truck, it would be the same weight as the current trucks. Japan is the biggest, has declared themselves to become the first hydrogen economy. What does that mean? From ships, from planes, trains, homes, everything will be powered by hydrogen. And what's amazing is platinum is the key, the catalyst, converting that hydrogen, also harvesting that hydrogen into a gas, and then also converting it into electricity. So if you say to me, what do I think of platinum? I tell you where it's based now. It was a top performer in 2022 in precious metals. It's predicted to be the top performer in 2023. And it's where its value is now. It's got probably 3 to 5 times growth still to go.